Picture this. You are walking down the stairs, half asleep, thinking about nothing. You miss the last step. Your foot lands wrong, your whole weight drops onto it, and there is a sound you feel more than hear, a snap. Your leg is broken. Today, this is a bad week. You call for help. Someone drives you to a hospital, a machine photographs the inside of your body, a doctor sets the bone, you get a cast, some painkillers, a pair of crutches, and a lot of snacks. In 6 weeks, you are limping around, complaining, and completely fine. Now break that same leg 2 million years ago. There is no hospital, there is no cast, there is no ambulance, and no delivery app. You are lying on the ground in the open, in a body that is suddenly useless, surrounded by a world that is actively trying to eat you. And here's the question almost nobody stops to ask. What actually happened to that person? Did a broken leg in the ancient world simply mean death? Or did something happen around that injured human that turns out to be one of the most important things our species has ever done? Let's start with the brutal reality, because you need to feel how bad this really was. Think about what a leg actually does for a wild animal. It is not just for walking, it is for everything that keeps you alive. Finding food, reaching water, and above all, running away. Your entire survival for millions of years came down to one simple ability. When something big and hungry shows up, you move, you run, you climb, you get out of reach. A broken leg deletes all of that in a single second. Now you cannot hunt, you cannot gather, you cannot walk to the river to drink, you cannot follow your group as they move to new land. And when a predator finally strolls over to investigate the strange moaning creature lying in the grass, you cannot do the one thing every animal is built to do. You cannot flee. This is why, out in the wild, a broken leg is almost always a death sentence. Watch a zebra snap a leg on the savannah. It does not get a recovery period. Its own herd walks away because they have to, and within a day or two, it is gone. Nature does not do bed rest, so by every rule of the natural world, an ancient human with a shattered leg should simply die. Quickly. Alone. And yet, when we dig up ancient human skeletons, we find something that should not be possible. We find broken bones that healed. We find shattered legs that knitted back together. Snapped arms that fused and grew strong again. Skulls cracked and then sealed over. Bones that, by all rights, should have been the last thing that person ever felt, but instead show weeks, months, even years of healing after the injury. And to understand why that is so staggering, you have to understand what healing actually requires. A broken femur, the big bone in your thigh, takes around 6 weeks to heal, at the very least. 6 weeks. And during those weeks, the injured person can do almost nothing. They cannot get their own food. So someone has to feed them. They cannot walk to water. So someone has to bring it to them. They cannot defend themselves, so someone has to guard them. They cannot even move to keep up with the group, so either someone carries them or the entire group stops and waits. A healed bone is not just a medical fact. It is a receipt. It is physical proof that for weeks on end, while this person could give absolutely nothing back, other humans chose to keep them alive anyway. There is a famous story about this idea. An anthropologist named Margaret Mead was supposedly asked what she considered the first real sign of civilization. People expected her to say a tool, or a pot, or a cave painting. Instead, the answer was a healed femur. Because in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you die. A healed thigh bone means that someone stayed. Someone carried you and fed you and protected you through the worst weeks of your life, until you could stand again. That, she said, is where humanity begins. Not with a weapon, with compassion. And the incredible thing is, the bones back this up, again and again. Let's go to a cave in the mountains of northern Iraq, called Shanidar. Here, scientists found the skeleton of a Neanderthal man who lived around 45,000 years ago. Researchers nicknamed him Nandy. And Nandy was, to put it gently, a wreck. He had a withered, useless right arm that had been damaged and possibly amputated long before death. He was probably blind in one eye from a crushing blow to the face. He likely had hearing damage. He walked with a severe limp from injuries to his leg and foot. This was a man who could barely see, barely hear, and could not use one arm. By the logic of the wild, Nandy should have died young and fast. Instead, The bones show he lived for years and years with all of these injuries. Decades, possibly. An old man by the standards of his time. There is only one way that happens. His group carried him. They fed him. They looked after a man who, for much of his life, could not have hunted or fought or kept up on his own. 45,000 years ago, Neanderthals, the so-called brutes, were running a nursing home in a cave. And Nandi is not alone. In southern Italy, there is a young man we call Romito II, who lived around 10,000 years ago. He had a form of dwarfism that left him unusually short, with arms that could not fully do the work of hunting and heavy labor. In a tiny mobile community that lived and died by physical work, he was, by cold logic, a burden. He survived into adulthood anyway. His people kept him, fed him, and moved with him. Then there is the old man of La Chapelle, a Neanderthal who lived to a ripe old age with crippling arthritis and almost no teeth left in his head. Think about that. Without teeth, he could not chew tough raw food, which means someone else was likely preparing softer food for him or even pre-chewing it, so an old man who could no longer feed himself would not starve. And we can push this even further back. At a site called Dmanisi, we find a human skull from nearly 1.8 million years ago. That belonged to someone who had lost almost all of their teeth long before they died. The bone had healed over the empty sockets. Again, someone helped this person survive without the ability to chew. That is not tens of thousands of years ago, that is nearly 2 million. So the pattern is everywhere, and it is ancient. Long before cities, before farming, before writing, humans were already doing the one thing the wild forbids. They were refusing to leave the injured behind. But it goes beyond just waiting around, because some of these bones show something even more amazing. They show treatment. When a bone breaks and heals crooked, you can see it. The two ends fuse at a bad angle, twisted and lumpy, but some ancient broken bones healed almost straight. And a bone does not set itself straight by accident. Straight healing means someone pulled that limb back into position and held it there. Someone was setting bones. We find hints of splints, of injured limbs bound and supported. We find evidence of ancient peoples using plants as medicine, as painkillers, as ways to fight infection. These were not helpless creatures waiting for magic. They were, in their own way, practicing medicine tens of thousands of years before the word existed. And I want you to really sit inside that moment for a second. Imagine being the one to set the bone. There is no anesthetic. Your friend is in unimaginable pain. You have to grab the broken leg and pull hard, forcing the shattered ends of bone back into line while they scream, trusting that this brutal act is the only thing that will let them walk again. And then you stay. For weeks. Bringing water, food, warmth, guarding them in the dark, with no guarantee it will even work. That is not instinct. That is a choice. A choice to spend your own energy, your own safety, your own food on someone who might never repay it. So let's put the whole story back together. By every rule of nature, a broken leg in the ancient world should have been the end. No running, no hunting, no escape. Just a slow, lonely death in the grass. But that is not what the bones tell us. The bones tell us about healed femurs, and a battered old Neanderthal who lived for decades, and a young man with dwarfism who was never abandoned, and toothless elders who were quietly fed by hands we will never see. The bones tell us that our ancestors looked at their injured, their weak, and their broken, and instead of walking away, they stayed. A broken leg did not just test an ancient human's body, it tested their humanity. And over across hundreds of thousands of years, they passed. So the next time you are stuck on the couch with a cast on your leg, scrolling your phone, waiting on someone to bring you a glass of water, do not just feel sorry for yourself. Remember that you are living out the oldest promise our species ever made. The promise that when one of us falls and cannot get up, the rest of us will not leave. That promise is written into your bones because it is written into theirs. And it might just be the very first thing that ever made us human.